Hi, Spongebob. I'm gonna kick your butt.
Bullying has been a problem basically since the dawn of humanity. Humans are just incapable of coexisting without attacking or harassing one another, and it's not always just the case of some bratty kids picking on a kid. Sometimes it's so much more subtle and insidious than that. It can be some intimidating teacher pressuring a student into doing something they don't want to do, or a teenager spreading some kind of gossip about their own friends. And that's exactly what we're exploring today in 3 specific episodes of SpongeBob SquarePants, each of which highlights bullying in a unique and different way. So how does SpongeBob confront bullying? Let's find out. The episode The Bully opens with the arrival of a new student at Mrs. Puff's boating school, this weird stick-thin but not guy called Flats the Flounder.
Tell the class something about yourself, Flats.
Well, I like to kick people's butts.
This is basically all that we're ever going to know about Flats, but it's also kind of the only thing that we need to know. This is pretty much what every single bully does when they want to assert their authority. Most of the time, bullies will just openly state their intentions and hope that everyone thinks it's a joke. It works.
Last week we
Hi,
started sections.
I'm SpongeBob.
Hi, Spongebob. I'm gonna kick your butt.
There's literally no other way that SpongeBob could have handled the situation without it coming back to bite him in the ass. All SpongeBob knows is kindness, and that's exactly what bullies like Flats feed off of.
I mean it.
That time it almost seemed like... You did mean it.
Now, this is textbook bullying. Escalating that was a pretty open threat into a much more physical threat of violence, and it's hard to overlook the fact that all SpongeBob actually did was say hello. But part of the reason this episode nails the whole bullying aspect is because of what happens when SpongeBob tries to protect himself by seeking help from people with more authority. So he goes straight to Mrs. Puff.
Mrs. Puff, can I be excused for the rest of my life?
Okay, that was a little darker than I'd expected, but that's pretty much the go-to instinctive response for all of us when we get bullied. When I was in school, I remember seeing one kid get bullied so overwhelmingly that he ended up having to move schools. It's that kind of helplessness that can drive people into seriously dangerous and unhealthy places in their lives. Fortunately, SpongeBob has friends who can help him through it. But, like I said, Bikini Bottom is full of people who look out for themselves. And it turns out that Patrick is actually old college friends with SpongeBob's bully. When SpongeBob eventually confides in Mrs. Puff about Flat's threats, she takes it upon herself to do her job and try to get it to stop.
SpongeBob, I talked to Flats for you. It was all a misunderstanding.
You what?
He was never going to kick your butt at all.
But this is a classic, disastrous mistake on her part. Not only has she completely dismissed his concerns and fears, but she's also basically put him into an even more dangerous situation. When authority figures get involved in bullying causes, the situation tends to escalate. We see this here with Flats. He can't bring himself to just stand down and let SpongeBob live. He feels the need to chase him down and harm him repeatedly, purely to make himself feel strong. It's a psychological thrill that leaves SpongeBob feeling drained, paranoid, and stressed. But all of Flats' actions bring him to some terrible consequences, landing himself in the hospital. At this point, SpongeBob has to make a decision on what path he's going to take in life, but SpongeBob is such a fundamentally good person that there's really never any doubt.
This young boy saved your life. He performed CPR for 5 hours straight.
They said you'd be okay after the first few minutes, but I just wanted to be sure.
Obviously, SpongeBob would never even think about doing anything other than helping someone who's in need of it. But this is something we see in our society all the time. Those who actually want to help and look out for someone else are constantly being put into these kinds of situations where they don't even want to consider letting someone else down. This is basically what bullies do. They take advantage because they know these people are too good to not come back, and that's basically exactly what Flats does.
Wow, I'm touched. I'll have to remember that when I'm kicking your butt.
It all culminates with this scene where Flats is finally about to release all of his rage on SpongeBob, and Flats is relentless with it. He just wails on SpongeBob so aggressively that it's pretty obvious that all of this is coming from a deeper trauma that causes anger and rage, which is actually a common and very real thing among bullies. For some reason, SpongeBob just doesn't even notice that he's taking all these hits because it doesn't actually hurt him. And then suddenly, when he realizes he's being attacked, it all hits SpongeBob.
I'm absorbing his blows like I was made of some kind of spongy material.
And that's what this whole episode does so well. Because while this is all funny and silly, SpongeBob's ability to just absorb the blows without being hurt is what it's all about. It shows that the best defense against a bully is to not let it hurt you or damage you. Of course, it's not literal advice and nobody should just stand and take punches, but Flats ends up exhausting himself trying to hurt SpongeBob, while SpongeBob remains totally unaffected because he knows that he isn't the victim.
Flats was the real victim here. A victim of a society that's riding down a violent road to nowhere.
This final speech from SpongeBob is probably the most surprisingly meaningful moment of the episode. Bullies, in real life too, are driven by this cruel society that forces them into this kind of life. Everyone is insecure, and they feel this is the way they express it. Of course, when Mrs. Puff walks in, it looks like SpongeBob is the one who's doing the bullying, and she's quick to shut that down, which suggests that she has a favorite student in Flats. Which, of course, it's not uncommon, but is definitely not something that should be happening with a teacher. So how does SpongeBob stand up to his bullies? How does he handle it when he feels attacked? Fools in April digs into that idea, exploring how Squidward's totally foolish reactions to SpongeBob forces him to protect himself. It's no surprise to anybody that SpongeBob loves April Fool's Day, the one day of the year where he can be as silly as he wants to be and nobody can say anything. But when you love something so much, you become a target to those more miserable than you. And for everybody who is happy to say,
April Fools! To me! Ah!
there's a Squidward. As soon as Squidward hears just what SpongeBob is all excited about, he finds any excuse not to go into work, probably because he just knows himself so well. If he's anywhere near SpongeBob, he's going to say something that's, not nice. And here's the thing, some people hate April Fool's Day because it's a day of pranks, and they think that pranks are cruel, which, don't get me wrong, they can be. But when they're done in the way SpongeBob does them, they're so harmless that they're funny. The real problem comes when people just don't want to laugh at themselves, which is really part of the problem with Squidward. The whole show, he's been shown to take himself very seriously, much more than SpongeBob ever takes himself seriously. So the idea of being humiliated for everyone to laugh at probably hurts his ego. So he calls the Krusty Krab and tries to fake sickness to get off work, but Krabs convinces him that there's an art dealer in town looking to honor him as the artist of the month. The only problem is,
He told me to tell you, April Fools.
yeah, this is actually low-key kinda cruel. I mean, it's one thing to prank someone who clearly hates it, but to prank him by targeting the one thing that he actually cares about is such a bullying move. But this kind of ties into something we see a lot in the real world. When someone gets bullied a lot, they often tend to lash out at other people or act out in ways that just continues the cycle. We all know that one kid from school who just shut down and roasted the hell out of everyone else because he didn't want them to do it to him first. SpongeBob isn't intending to bully or even hurt Squidward's feelings, but he's just feeding all of Squidward's insecurities by doing something like this. SpongeBob continues to pull these harmless, kind of dumb pranks on the customers, and they love it. But it's all just annoying the hell out of Squidward, who, again, really does not like the whole practical joke thing. What SpongeBob finds funny isn't funny to him. It's just straight up annoying, and Squidward eventually has enough of it.
That's it! SpongeBob and his stupid pranks! I'm gonna show him what a real prank is all about!
Squidward ends up setting up this crazy elaborate prank that involves rope and mustard and, honestly, way too many steps for one prank, but it's all perfectly set up, and when SpongeBob goes for the bait, he puts it into action, and it's horrifying. I mean, it's one of the worst things he could have done. This is basically escalating a simple prank into a full-on assault, and it's kind of mind-blowing that Squidward thought SpongeBob would appreciate something like this, but he is just like,
SpongeBob! I was just kidding!
and this is a whole other kind of bullying. We're talking about straight up ignorance here, about someone who is completely unaware of how the other person feels. It's not that Squidward is intentionally trying to be cruel or to harm SpongeBob, as much as he's just not even thinking about him. But SpongeBob is devastated by the whole thing. He's so humiliated by what Squidward has done that he bursts out of the restaurant crying, which is something SpongeBob never does. So now Squidward's crossed a major line, and basically everybody in the Krusty Krab wants to make sure that he knows about it.
April Fools. Jerk.
This is the show pointing out the clear difference between a harmless prank and a straight-up assault. What SpongeBob had done to Squidward, playing on his passions and the things he cares about, was not a good thing, but he didn't physically harm Squidward in the same way. Everybody found something funny in it, but now Squidward has actually crossed serious lines. He became a bully purely by accident, and this happens so much more often than any of us really think about. We're all guilty of it to some degree. And the worst thing about all this is that as everybody leaves, Squidward still doesn't understand what he did wrong.
Why is it whenever I'm having fun, it's wrong?
It's that same self-centered logic that usually ends up hurting people, and much like the bullies who have it, Squidward doesn't even know about it. But he does know enough that he feels he has to go and apologize to SpongeBob, if only to try and move past the social aggression he's getting from all the customers. The only problem is, he can't seem to actually say the words.
I better tell SpongeBob I'm sorry. Huh?
On some level, Squidward clearly doesn't feel he has to apologize for anything. In his mind, this is still some huge prank that SpongeBob has massively overreacted to, and because of that, he just can't bring himself to actually apologize, meaning that all of the pain and misery SpongeBob feels will just keep going unless he can get on with it. But when he goes to SpongeBob's house, he finds Patrick, who says that SpongeBob is seriously depressed.
Must have been pretty good to make him cry like that.
Patrick is just making Squidward feel worse and worse, but even now Squidward just can't seem to bring himself to actually say the words, "I'm sorry." And every time he even tries, it seems like SpongeBob just wants nothing to do with him. This psychological reaction is very common when we get hurt. We instinctively shut down, desperate not to actually confront the potential that we may be wrong or that we've acted like a major... No matter how hard Squidward tries to say it, the words just won't come out. He even locks himself in a bubble and only then can he say it. And even though SpongeBob didn't hear it, Squidward is happy.
I don't care. I said it. My conscience is clear.
And this reminds me so much of our world today, because just think about how social media has made it so easy to troll and bully people. We all live in these bubbles where our thoughts can basically be hidden from the rest of the world, but it doesn't actually solve anything like we're seeing here. SpongeBob is still upset about the whole thing, and even though Squidward feels good about himself, nothing has actually changed, which is why he's still hearing those voices in his head, reminding him what a terrible person he is. His conscience isn't clear because bullying doesn't work that way. If you're a half-decent person, you're always going to regret it. It's the psychological two-way street where both the bully and the bullied suffer, and it's not until the bully finally confronts his own conscience that he realizes,
I'm sorry. I admit it. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. In fact, SpongeBob, I like you.
Squidward can't hold it in anymore, and he just ends up admitting that Bikini Bottom means everything to him and that he's really just pretending to hate everybody. It's the same problem that all bullies have. They're suppressing the feelings and emotions they don't want to confront. In fact, a lot of bullying stems from this deep desire for something that the victim has or represents. SpongeBob is Bikini Bottom in a lot of ways. He's weird and quirky and way too much. But Squidward's hate of all those qualities are just a mask for his love for them. This is his home. But even so, he forces SpongeBob to keep his secret, which SpongeBob promises to do. Only he has one more prank to pull on Squidward, opening the door to reveal everybody in town is in there, and they heard every word. Some people might think that last prank condones revenge or something, but I think it's actually much deeper than that. The show is basically just showing Squidward what he did to SpongeBob, giving him a taste of the brutal humiliation he put him through. I guess it's really one big lesson in the consequences of bullying through pranks. Yet there are a lot more subtle and toxic forms of bullying, and most of those can be seen in friendships, like SpongeBob and Patrick's. So how does bullying impact the characters' relationships? Let's dive into an episode called The Secret Box. SpongeBob invites Patrick to go jellyfishing, but Patrick is preoccupied with the secret box, a mysterious object that immensely piques SpongeBob's curiosity.
Secret box? You never told me about your secret box.
SpongeBob is pretty obviously upset about the fact that his best friend is keeping something so cool a secret from him, and honestly, it wouldn't even be much of a problem for Patrick to be keeping it to himself. But he's pretty obviously just teasing and torturing SpongeBob the whole time.
No, SpongeBob! If only you could see inside my secret box, it would change your life.
Every time that Patrick teases SpongeBob like this, it becomes even more agonizing that he can't just look inside and see whatever wonders are inside. And while it doesn't seem like bullying from the outside, Patrick has so much control in the situation that it totally is. He's essentially isolating SpongeBob from knowing something that is apparently very, very special and exciting, and for someone who calls himself SpongeBob's best friend, that's surprisingly mean for Patrick to do. And all it does is make SpongeBob want to know more. He's so desperate that he starts trying to trick Patrick into telling him, or even better, showing him what exactly is inside, even if that means blabbing his own secrets to Patrick.
Did you know you're my best friend?
Yeah, that's not a secret, bro. That's just an observation, but that's really the start of SpongeBob spiraling into total chaos, because now he can't get it out of his mind. The peer pressure that he has to know is overwhelming his mind, and in a way, SpongeBob is also contributing to this whole bullying thing, because even though Patrick has explained that he doesn't want to share what's in his box, SpongeBob just won't take no for an answer. He's willing to give up all of his least controversial secrets just to see what's in it.
I love my job at the Krusty Krab. I sleep with my shoes on. I like jelly on both sides of my toast. I've got an overdue library book.
But none of it works anyway. Patrick is not going to let SpongeBob look inside the box because it would ruin the secret.
It's a heavy burden, SpongeBob, but nobody must know the mystery of the box.
And yet, SpongeBob just cannot respect his best friend's wishes. He starts fighting Patrick to hold the box, even ripping his own arms off just to hold on to it. And Patrick is furious furious about the whole thing because it doesn't matter how much he says it, SpongeBob just will not listen.
If you ever come near my secret box again, we won't be friends anymore!
Honestly, this is a really mean thing for Patrick to do. Not only is it serious emotional manipulation, but he's been teasing and tormenting SpongeBob all the time about how amazing his box is and how special it is. He literally made SpongeBob want to look inside, but now he wants SpongeBob to not be interested. And now that he's lashing out at SpongeBob, it's just making him increasingly upset. This kind of emotional unpredictability is a classic bullying move. It's manipulation, basically, keeping the victim in a constant state of terror and desperation to try and please the bully. It's also the kind of thing you see in toxic relationships. SpongeBob even tries to apologize to Patrick as though he was the one who did everything wrong.
I have soiled our friendship garden. I just couldn't help myself. I know it's your secret. I promise to respect that. Oh, please forgive me, Patrick. Please.
This is such a common thing nowadays when the victim is so gaslit that they become convinced they actually did whatever they're being accused of, when in reality, SpongeBob did nothing but follow the curiosity that Patrick was, and still is, pushing on him. And what's worse is that the more Patrick does this push and pull thing, the more emotionally confused SpongeBob will be. He's going to be in a constant chase pattern, trying to save the friendship from collapsing when, actually, he would be better off to just ditch Patrick and find someone who doesn't manipulate him like this. So SpongeBob goes home and tries to forget about the whole thing and respect Patrick's wishes. But when he's in bed, all he can think about is what could be inside the box, and he starts convincing himself of all these horrible things.
Maybe Patrick's a deranged maniac who keeps his victims' severed heads in a box. Or even worse, maybe it's an embarrassing snapshot of me from the Christmas party.
SpongeBob is now so freaked out by the mystery that he feels like he has to know what's in the box like right now. So he once again crosses the line of Patrick's friendship, deciding he will sneak into Patrick's house, steal the box, and see what's inside and put it back where he found it. It's a major betrayal of their friendship deal, and this is the kind of thing that I've seen destroy friendships. So he sneaks into Patrick's house dressed like a burglar and tries to be quiet the whole time while Patrick sleeps. But every move that he makes is an unbelievably loud noise. It's like his betrayal is just echoing through the room. And no matter how quiet he tries to be, it's just not working. But Patrick is such a heavy sleeper that he doesn't wake up, even when SpongeBob is basically right on top of him taking the box. But SpongeBob is so messy that he ends up tripping and causing such a noise that Patrick wakes up. He's convinced that the clam burglar has broken in to steal his secret box, forcing SpongeBob to admit that he is the one who broke in.
Nice try, burglar, but SpongeBob's my best friend, and he'd never steal from me.
This is the heartbreaking moment that Patrick realizes just how much SpongeBob has betrayed him, and exactly like I said, the friendship can't withstand that realization. It's broken too much of the trust, and Patrick decides that this is it, although he words it a little more dramatically.
That's it, SpongeBob! You have crossed the line! As of right now, this friendship is over!
Really?
Nah, you can look inside if you really want to.
Okay, maybe it's not that dramatic, but still, SpongeBob finally gets to see what's inside the box and he discovers it's a string. That's it? Yep, Patrick has just been needlessly teasing and tormenting SpongeBob for the entire episode, and SpongeBob thinks that's pretty damn cool. He leaves Patrick's house thinking that his secret box is a pretty cool thing to have, but don't go thinking that we're finished talking about this, because after SpongeBob leaves, Patrick reveals the truth.
Good thing he didn't pull the secret string opening the secret compartment of my secret box.
Yeah, Patrick has been hiding SpongeBob's worst nightmare this entire time, an embarrassing photo of him from the Christmas party, which is also a form of bullying, by the way. Keeping a photo someone does not want you to keep and lying about it, these guys have a really messed up friendship. These 3 episodes are the perfect example of the consequences of bullying in several different contexts, because the reality is that bullying is not only at school or in a certain group of people, it affects everybody in so many different ways. It can really have a negative effect on people and force them to live their lives in ways that aren't all that helpful. And if there's anything that is consistent in these 3 episodes, it's that SpongeBob is largely a good person, that he always looks out for other people, but they're never there for him when he's the one being targeted. We should all be more like SpongeBob and do our best to do the right thing when we see the wrong behavior.